Biden and Kamala inherit a country with the most secure border in our nation's history. They flung our borders wide open to the largest invasion of illegal aliens our country has ever seen. The illegal aliens Biden and Kamala have led into our country have gone on to rape and murder American citizens, including our women and girls, including 158 Democrats who voted against deporting illegals who are here, murdering, raping, and who are also pedophiles, harming our women and girls. Biden and Kamala can't even tell us the difference between a woman and a mentally ill man in a dress.
Republicans on the Oversight Committee are back at it again, wasting our tax dollars just to air their grievances with the Biden-Harris administration.
One of the strangest responses from Kamala in the questionnaire was when she indicated she supported providing taxpayer-funded so-called gender-affirming care for illegal aliens in immigration detention, which we all know is cutting off their private parts. Taxpayer-funded cutting off of their private parts. So, Mr. Krikorian, is this occurring under this administration, and what are the serious safety consequences it may pose?
Well, I mean, the safety consequences of the procedures themselves I'm not qualified to talk about, but clearly it serves as yet one more incentive for people to illegally immigrate into the United States. In this case, people seeking a particular kind of medical procedures.
While still an incentive to some, as is the case with any policy, it is laughable to suggest that providing access to gender-affirming healthcare to undocumented immigrants has a noticeable impact on total immigration numbers. The amount of people wanting and needing these procedures is negligible when considering how many immigrants flee their homes due to climate change, political violence, poor economies, lack of educational opportunities, and other factors that are the real drivers of immigration and migration. But to the Republicans, and Nancy Mace in particular, this is just another tactic to demonize and lump in trans and non-binary people to a group her base already hates: immigrants.
She pledged to end the use of ICE detainers and criticized the cooperation between ICE and state and local law enforcement. How is this going to negatively affect our country?
It would make it extremely difficult to enforce immigration law because ICE is a relatively small agency and doesn't walk around the streets asking people what their green cards are. The main vehicle for finding illegal aliens, if you don't do worksite enforcement, which this administration has essentially stopped, is working with state and local law enforcement. When they arrest people for state and local crimes, their fingerprints go to DHS, and they're flagged as somebody that they know to be an illegal immigrant. A detainer is the request ICE sends out to say, hold on to this person for 48 hours at least, up to 48 hours so we can go and get them. If you're not using detainers, it is one of the most pro-criminal policies you could imagine, because the only people protected by stopping ICE detainers or not honoring them as sanctuary cities do, the only people protected are criminals. So it is a pro-criminal policy as well as an anti-immigration enforcement in general.
Thankfully, though, Jasmine Crockett and AOC were on the scene to highlight the vile, hateful rhetoric and lies Republicans were spewing during this committee hearing.
You know what? This hearing is actually the best example of what waste, fraud, and abuse looks like, because the only reason we're having this hearing is because somebody got their feelings hurt in a debate. And I don't understand why we're wasting taxpayer dollars. Next time, tell your big boy to show up and be ready to handle the woman in the room who hopefully will become the next president of the United States. Nevertheless, while we do have two amazing authors from Project 2025, which it seems like everybody got the memo, like, yes, I'm going to double down and say it's my thing, but I'm going to make sure I also say that it ain't our homeboys thing, because we know that it doesn't poll very well with the American people, because the American people are woke enough to recognize that there is nothing good in it for them. So with that being said, Ms. Perryman, I'm just curious, and this is yes or no. Is Trump's name ever mentioned in Project 2025? Yes or no? Just yes or no. I got you. I got you.
Within the document itself,
yes.
There are a number of references to the former administration.
So is Trump's name mentioned just one time?
I believe it's mentioned more.
Okay. 5 times.
I haven't counted.
Oh, okay. Well, if I told you that his name is mentioned approximately 312 times, would you have any reason to dispute that?
I don't have any reason to.
Okay, thank you very much. So it's interesting that we want to try to pretend. We're not going to pretend in here. We're going to work with facts and not fiction.
This is exactly the type of energy and enthusiasm the Democrats need to show more of when combating the lies Republicans are spreading about Project 2025 and its striking similarities to Donald Trump's campaign platform.
The final thing that I will say is that this election is the best example of why y'all are so afraid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because then you can't have a simple-minded, underqualified white man somehow end up ascending. Instead, you've got to pay attention to the qualified black woman that is on the other side.
We hear a lot of rhetoric on both sides about the issue of immigration. And it is precisely because it is seen as a border issue that millions of people suffer over and over and over again. It does matter that Vice President Harris was not the quote unquote border czar. And let me explain to you why. Because what Vice President Harris has been tasked with under President Biden's administration is addressing the root causes of immigration. Once you have millions of people at the southern border of the United States, you've lost. We need to understand why people are coming to the southern border of the United States and mitigating that in the first place. And frankly, when we turn the page and look at what happened in the Trump administration, we have to see where folks are coming from. And I am tired of hearing from people who cannot point out Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, Guatemala on a map, telling us about how to mitigate the millions of people seeking refuge. We should be eliminating the reasons why people are seeking refuge in the first place. Under the Trump administration, Donald Trump participated in what we saw in Venezuela and many of the regime change activities that were happening there. And what we saw most desperately are the horrific sanctions that were placed not targeting specifically the Maduro regime, but the Venezuelan people, innocent Venezuelan people that are being starved of food and basic resources. That is what is contributing to a destabilizing environment and part of what they are fleeing. And that is not to conflate the Venezuelan people with the Maduro regime, because I oppose the anti-democratic measures in which, even just recently in the election, Maduro's refusal to make public the results of a free and fair election. You want to know how else Republicans have contributed to the immigration crisis? Marco Rubio has been sitting and sat and stalled and delayed key ambassadorial appointments of the United States across the world. I myself led a congressional delegation to Latin America and sat across in the Colombian embassy, where we had an acting ambassador because Marco Rubio refuses to allow U.S. diplomacy to proceed. You tell me what is destabilizing. What is destabilizing? People have no idea. Legislators who are claiming to understand the issue of immigration don't have the slightest clue as to what is happening in Latin America while supporting the very policies that are driving people to here in desperation in the first place. So don't talk to me about how Republicans have an answer to the issue of immigration.
What I really like about Jasmine Crockett and AOC's testimony is that they didn't hold back any punches. They were very direct, and they weren't about to sit up there and get disrespected or interrupted. And I love how she straight up was like, yo, why are we wasting our tax dollars here? The only reason we're here is because Trump, your boy, couldn't put his big boy pants on and wasn't prepared for the debate, right? And then the other part that stuck out to me was how she told these people, yo, this election is another great example of how y'all are so afraid of diversity, equity, inclusion. Because then you can have a underqualified, mediocre white man ascending to become president. And then you have to deal with a very qualified black woman becoming president. Okay? And for AOC, I love how she really hit home the message about, yo, we need to be looking at how we can eliminate the root causes of why people are fleeing from their countries to America. When we do that, we have a better situation. But the Republicans, they don't have a solution. They don't have a plan. I think Republicans are so hell-bent on using immigration as a campaigning point during election season is because they know their base does not like, or they don't view immigrants coming from certain countries as humans. They view them as illegal aliens. They're not worthy of life and fresh air and everything that people take for granted here. And because of that, they will make sure to bring up these issues every single time and show how xenophobic and racist they are. Okay, they don't care about these immigrants. It's very clear, very clear. They care about demonizing them and putting them in a very negative light.